right, here we go. I think we got everything going. Sorry, I'm a little late today. We got, of course, technical issues just as I tried to start the stream, which is, yeah, not surprising. So what we want to work on today is, let me see if I can pull this up quickly and just show you the announcement. So I stumbled across this the other day, and it was an AWS news announcement about some new support for Security Hub. Let me see if I can quickly find this. Let's do this. New controls. Yeah, this is it here. So it's back. This is actually an old announcement, and what I just was kind of flipping through some stuff, and there's some new CloudFormation resource support that, to be honest, I'm not sure if it existed before or it's just something maybe that existed and they updated it. I don't quite know. So I figured today we would play around with this a little bit and see, how we could use it just to test it out. I did try to get ahead a little bit. I'll show you what I've created so far. If we go to CloudFormation, and I created a key. I might have to modify the key policy a little bit, so I created that. I created an S3 bucket. The S3 bucket we don't need specifically for Security Hub, but Security Hub requires the AWS config service. So what I thought we could do is sort of a more complete example. We'll set config up, and we'll set, I can't remember what the feature's called, but you can do, I think it's called configuration snapshots. And what we can do is send configuration snapshots from the AWS config service to the S3 bucket on a periodic basis. And if you are setting up config, it's a pretty common way to do it. So I thought we would set that up. I ran into a few problems today. I just didn't get a chance to go and do some of this legwork today. So I've got, oops, perfect timing. So let's get back in here. So I've got KMS set up, I've got S3 set up, and then I was just creating a role here for an IAM role that we can use with config. And then, out of the blue, I had some strange issues on my laptop. It just started to crash on me. I'm not sure what happened. So I've been kind of trying to figure that out. So hopefully this will create now. We're going to have to change this policy. I pulled this policy doc from somewhere. I'm not even sure where. I had it on my laptop somewhere. So I just thought it would be at least a starting point so we didn't have to write it all from scratch. Okay. So that's kind of where we are. I was hoping that we would have config up and running at this point. We're almost there. Okay. So let's see if we can figure out the rest of the config setup, and then we can get into actually setting up the Security Hub service. So here's where I am with our config setup, and we've got a managed policy, which for now just allows config the ability to run decrypt and generate data key operations against the KMS key that we created earlier on. This is the role that we will use and associate with the config service itself. There are some more permissions that are required here, and this is where suddenly my laptop just decided it needed a little break. So I'm gonna play a little catch up. And the documentation that I was looking at is here. I'll show you where I was grabbing this from. So if you go back over to Firefox, what we have here is the trust policy for our role. Pretty simple, right? We're going to allow the config service to assume this role as long as the source account is our account address. And I've set that up already. That's the easy part. And we need to add this. This is the IAM role, or the policy that we'll use with the role to give config permission to the S3 bucket. I've got the S3 bucket there, but we've got to add this. And then I added the KMS key. You can also set config up to generate events through SNS. We're not going to do that today. So we'll just leave it out of our sort of list of permissions. So what we have to do is this little piece here. And then I think at that point we've got the role set up and we can go into config. Okay, so if we flip back over to here, I'm going to open up another window. I want this document somewhere else. Okay, we'll just drag that over here. All right, so in PyCharm, what we have to do is create another statement here. So we're going to give this a statement ID just so we can find it easier later. We'll say allow, this is S3 access for config. And then we can say effect is allow. And I'm just getting this off of that page. So S3 put object, S3 put object ACL, and then our resource definition is our bucket. For now, I'm just going to put a placeholder in here. We'll say to do S3 ARN, and then we have a condition. So the condition is string. I think I created a condition somewhere else. Yeah, string equals. Is it string equals? No, it's string like. And then here we can say S3, and we just say bucket owner full control. Okay, and then there's one more statement that we need to create here. Or sorry, not statement. We need, yeah, I guess this is another statement. So we need get bucket ACL, and then in this case, again, this is going to be, and we're just going to grab this from our S3 stack. So these are the two values we have to put in there, and we can get those from here. Oh, we only exported, again, this was a template that I had partially built already, so I figured it was a good starting point for today. So what I need is I need to add another output here. So we'll say bucket 0 ARN. The value is get attribute bucket 0. I think it's just ARN like that. We'll double check. We can grab this and do this and just make it ARN. So let's check this output value. So if we jump back over here, here's S3, and we'll go return values. Yeah, so we can run an intrinsic function get attribute with just ARN, and it'll give us this. All right, so that's good. So we can go back over here. And okay, that's fine. And then if we go back to IAM, we'll do this. We'll include the S3 stack here, and then we can borrow this line. This will be S3 stack, and we'll just copy that down here again. Now in this second one, it is just the ARN, so that's easy. Now here we actually have to build this out a little bit more, because we need, optionally, we can include a prefix and an account ID, and then we need to say /* for all of the objects, because we need to give access to all of the objects in the bucket to run those put object API calls and the put object ACL calls. So how do we want to do this here? I wonder if we could do a join statement and do something like this. So our delimiter will be the backslash, and then we're going to say comma, and we can grab all of this and put it here. So that creates the beginning of our resource ARN. So that should give us the full ARN, and then we're going to do AWS logs, and then we'll do ref AWS account ID, and then we'll do star. Okay, so we'll just essentially join all these fields together and separate each of the fields with a backslash. Let's see what it does. I am going to need, I'm going to need to output this. So let's have a look at some of the config resources. I'm assuming that we're going to need to export at least the ARN for this role, but let's just check. So if we go back to Firefox and we go here, there are two things we're going to set up on the config side. And that is our configuration recorder and then the delivery channel. And I don't even really know, to be honest, if we need the delivery channel. Like, it's more best practice than something we'll need for the Security Hub piece. So maybe tonight what we'll do is we'll set up the configuration recorder where we still need that role. So that's fine. Why don't we set this up, and then I can always add the delivery channel after the fact if we have time at the end of the stream, depending on how long this takes us. I think that's maybe what we'll do instead. Okay, so what's this expecting? It's just the ARN. The Amazon resource name ARN of the role that's going to be assumed by config and used by the configuration recorder. And then this page is where I was getting the policy documents that we need. Okay, so the trust policy, access to S3, access to KMS. We're not going to do this. Now what's this piece here? To record your IAM or your AWS resources, config requires IAM permissions to get configuration details about your resources. To use an AWS managed policy, AWS config role, and attach it to the IAM role, you configure with AWS config. AWS updates the policy each time. Okay, so this is an AWS managed policy that we have to add. So that we can go back over here, go to IAM, and if we just go roles and just search for config. Interesting. That is not what we were expecting to see. Let me just double check that doc again. Where did that go? Okay, this is a service role. Let's just search for this. This is the AWS managed policy. Oh, I'm in the role. I'm in the role screen, not the policy screen. That's what we want. Okay, so we can just go here and grab the ARN off of this. Okay, so this piece up here. And then what we'll do is jump back over here. And this is easy. We can just go down here. See this? And we'll add a line and we'll just put the config role in there. So that pulls in the AWS managed policy document for config, and then these are the additional permissions that we've added up here to give the the config service access to KMS and S3, these two statements for S3. Okay, so let's do this. All right. And we can go here, and we'll just let this pipeline run through. And what did we do wrong? All right, some typo there. What's line 42? my desk here a bit. A second. That's a little better. Okay, it was line 42. Yeah, I'm not, this join statement. What have I done here? Let's look for the easy things. If I've just dropped a square brackets, we got 2 brackets, that's fine. 2 square brackets, there's our curly braces. I'm just seeing if we've dropped any single quotes or anything. So let's have a look at this intrinsic function and just check the config of this one. We just messed it up. So join, our delimiter, and then this list. That looks pretty basic, right? Did I just miss a comma or something? I don't think I did. No, we got that. Okay, okay, so for the join delimiter, you can't use any functions. That's fine. So our delimiter is just slash. That's no big deal. And then list of values, you can use these functions. And we've got import value. So that's fine. Okay, so what have we done wrong here? The only thing that I can see, and I don't know if it's going to matter, is there's this space here. I don't know. Comma, comma. It sure looks okay to me. Well, let's just, like the example, I know this is silly, but let's just do it exactly like the example, add some spaces. I don't see how that's going to make a difference. Join, let me just check one other thing. Line 42, column 92. Now I've moved stuff around. Oh, I see what I've done. Okay, so let's get rid of all these silly spaces. Yeah, we don't need the spaces, but we do need the square bracket at the end. There we go. Right here, this needs to be in a single quotes. So this is probably 92 right there, yeah. So what we'll do is we'll just wrap that in single quotes. There we go. Okay, so let's do this. Okay. Still didn't like it. Dependencies, AWS account, unresolved dependencies. Okay, account ID. What else did I mess up? Let's just do this. Account. So down here, that's fine. Oh, maybe I need a sub here instead. I think you can use a ref. I'm not sure. I thought you could use both to do that. Okay, let's see what it does this time. All right, we made it past the validation stage. That's a plus. Give it a second. Okay, looks pretty good. There we go. Oh, okay, yeah. So what we're doing here is we're pulling in the ARN from the S3 bucket, and I need to pass in the stack name to do that because we're using, what is it called? Cross-stack references. So let's go back over here. And what we need to do is in the CI script, in the deploy script here, I need to say S3 stack is just this, S3, and then down here, we can add S3 stack equals S3 stack. Okay. Let's see what happens here. All right, that's a little better. So if we go back here and go back to CloudFormation, I think we have to do this first because we exported the ARN, which will show as an empty change set, but that's fine. We just added the additional output. That's an easy one. And now, once that's done, we can go to IAM, and now we'll have a change set here. So yeah, we're updating the managed policy and we're updating the role. So let's execute this. And what do we do here? Statement IDs and single oops. Yeah. So if we go back here, I have statement IDs and I just made them the same. So we'll just say allow S3 get access for config. And up here, just to make it a little, oh look, I also spelt this wrong, not pub, put. So we'll say allow S3 put access. There we go. Try this again. Well, it didn't fail right away, so that's a good sign. That should update the permissions that we need. There we go. Okay, so now it's just updating the role, because in that role we also added the reference to the config permissions, right? That additional policy. Okay, great. So there we go. So now if we look at the resources, we've got the managed policy that we created and the role. So if we go look at the role, permissions, there's the AWS managed policy document that essentially is giving config access to all the services that it supports. So that's good. And then this is our customer managed policy that's giving it access to KMS and S3. All right. So far, so good. Now the one thing, I don't know if we actually did this or not in IAM. Yeah, we didn't. I need to add the output section for our roles. So we'll say outputs, and then I'll just say config role 0 ARN. And the value here is what? Go back. here and we look at the role, I just want to see what the outputs are for the role. Return values. So ref gives us the name, and a get attribute gets us the ARN. So maybe what we'll do, just in case we need the name at some point, we'll export both the name and the ARN. So if we go back over here, so first we'll do this. We'll say name, and this is export. Oh, sorry, no, we got to do, oh boy, what is that again? Just check here. There's the structure. So value export name. Value in this case would be ref that, and then we say export name, and we'll copy this again from the S3 one. Just do that. Okay, and then we can just copy this whole thing and make this the ARN. All right, there we go. And we'll just push this first. And again, this will be an empty change set just because we're changing just the outputs. So there we go. And we'll just wait for this to finish and just make sure the outputs look okay. There we go, outputs. So IAM, ARN, IAM, name. That should do for now. Okay, so that's good. On to the next piece. The next piece is the config setup. Let's close all of these. Got too many windows open. And we'll go back to config. And again, I had this for something else. So I think for now, what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of all these parameters. And you can see how in the original one, I had these bundled together, which doesn't make sense. And we're going to get rid of the delivery channel for the time being. The delivery channel is how, again, we take those config snapshots and we deliver them to an S3 bucket. But we don't really need that for Security Hub, so we're going to get rid of it for the time being. All we need is the config recorder, and that comes from somewhere else. We're going to enable recording of all supported resources in config, and we'll include global resources. Now, this is the one thing. Remember, config is a regional service. You would want to make sure that if you're using CloudFormation or something like that to deploy config in multiple regions, you only want to record global resources in a single region. No sense in recording those global resources in every region you're operating in, because then you're recording, you're spending money on recording those resources in multiple regions, and you don't need to do that. Not a big deal for us today because we're just setting this up in a single region. Maybe what we'll do is we'll add a couple things here. So first off, let's check to see if the configuration recorder supports tags at this point. We'll just open up another window here and see if there's anything else that it supports. It doesn't. It's literally three things. The name of the configuration recorder, that will automatically assign the name of default, and we can't change the name once it's created. So recording group, role ARN. Okay, well this is pretty basic then. Let's have a look at the recording group. Does it have anything in it we want to add? We've got all supported, include global resources, recording strategy. What's that? There's a lot of stuff here. It's not required. Let's read this. An object that specifies the recording strategy for the configuration recorder if you set the use only field of blah, blah, blah to all supported resource types, AWS config records configuration changes for all supported regionally recorded resource types. You also must set the all supported field of configuration recording group to true. When AWS config adds support for a new regionally recorded resource, AWS config automatically starts recording it. Okay. What's the default for this? Does it give us a default value? Doesn't say. If we set the use only field to inclusion by resource type, then it only records changes for the resource types you specify. Okay, we don't want that. So we just want it to record everything. And you know what? I think this is the default. We will check it once we deploy it. I don't think we really need to change much in that template outside of, where did it go? There we go. Outside of including our IAM stack. That's it. Because I know it doesn't, yeah, okay, that's fine. And then here, we're going to use that import statement again. And we'll just borrow that out of one of these other stacks that we used it in. Actually, it was in IAM, wasn't it? Here. So what we're going to do is do this. Right, and then, is that what we called it over here? Yeah, ARN. So that's that. Now, the one thing that I didn't actually think of checking is if we go here, we're in the Canadian region. Oh, config is turned on. And so is Security Hub by the looks of it. Sorry, I thought I was in a region where we hadn't turned this on. That's okay, we can fix that. Okay, so Security Hub's already running here. What we'll do then is let's go to US East 2. And if we look at config here, okay, it's not enabled. And then I would assume Security Hub is also not enabled. All right, so we have to make a couple changes then. Didn't even think of that. So if we go back over to here, this can stay the same. That's fine. So what we'll do is we'll include that in our CI script. Here's our validation stage. So in this case, what did we put that under? Management config. And then let's add it to our deploy script. And I'll just copy this. We'll dump it here and we'll say deploy AWS config. Just change that to config. Okay. It does require the IAM stack. That's what we're passing in. Jobs, it needs the deploy IAM. We want to make sure IAM is deployed before we do this because it relies on that for some permissions. And then we'll say mgmt config. Here we get rid of this. Right, that's easy. Now, one of the things we want to do though is this is picking up my profile information from our GitLab environment. So we need to make one change. So what we're going to do is we're going to go up here and we're going to say, we'll just call it Twitch variables. And then I think the structure of it's like this, Twitch variables. And we just need, we're going to call this region is US East 2. And then we can do this. We can basically actually pull these variables in where we need them. I think it's like that. And then we'll just say Twitch variables. And what we'll have to do here is we'll just have to, for any of the regional services, we're just going to add this. S3 is regional, so let's just cut and paste a bunch of this stuff. And then we need this. Actually, let's just do one thing at a time. This is global, so that's fine. This is regional, so we'll dump that in there. And then we just need the dash dash region. So add it there. That's global. Add it there. Now let me just check this. Give me a second to just check where could I find that quickly? Just let me have a quick look at another project. Sorry, I'll flip this over to Firefox for a second. Okay, I was close. Close. So what we have to do here is actually make it like that. Oof. That, and just change these guys out. Okay. Now, before we deploy this, let's go back to Firefox and we'll make sure we're in the Canadian region. Oh, that's really weird. Did I just... Okay, look, so KMS S3 IAM. Did it change the region on us earlier and I thought config was enabled? Maybe. Nope, okay. Yep, there it is. So we're still in CA Central 1, there's config, and then hub is also configured. Okay, whew, that was weird. So we'll go back over here, and I'm going to leave the IAM stack because that's global, but we're going to delete our S3 stack because I want that to go, I want that bucket to be in the same region as config. And then yeah, that sucks. KMS usually takes a little bit of time to deploy, and this failed. See this? Because it's used somewhere else. So let's deploy or delete this first. No, we might have to build this whole stack out again because these are all referred to each other. Let's just clean it all up. So we'll delete this. All right, so that's good. That's gone. We'll delete S3. That should be, I think we can delete that now. Yeah, there we go, because before it was used by the IAM stack. And now that's gone. And then KMS. KMS is going to take some time to redeploy, but that should clean that up. So we can let that delete, and then what we'll do is we'll switch over to Ohio, and we will push our CloudFormation, our stack updates here. So we'll just say feature, actually fix, changed region. Let's see if I managed to get this working. Oh, that's weird. Oh, it's the first time we included that, and I know what that problem is. Back over here. So when we did the config stack, there's IAM. No, IAM stack equals IAM stack. That's fine. Did I maybe just... Let's just check that config stack. IAM stack. Oh, look what I did. This should be IAM stack there. Hey, Kevin. Welcome. How are you? We're just, I had a bunch of resources deployed and realized they were in a region that I already had some of the services set up in, so that's going to not work very well for the demo. So I'm just redeploying in a new region. Okay, Ohio. There we go. So KMS is going to take a little bit of time. So we'll run that one. And unfortunately, we refer to KMS in this stack. We refer to it in the IAM stack. So we're going to have to wait for the KMS stack to deploy first before we can deploy anything else. And why don't we have our IAM stack here yet? Oh, you know what I did? Yeah, this is going to be a little confusing. Remember I said this is global, so who cares? So this is going into our default region, and then the rest of the services are going into US East 2 because we overrode what was in our profile settings. So that's actually kind of confusing. So why don't we just make it all deploy here? So what we'll do is we'll go back over to our deploy script, and all we need to do is add in that variable, this thing right here. So we can add that here, and then we can just include the region information. I think that'll make it easier. So what we're going to say is fix added region info to IAM deploy. And I won't be able to actually push this because what will happen is it will fail because this is create in progress. So now we got to wait for that to finish. Ugh. Okay, well, what we can do is we can start looking at the Security Hub piece now. So let's just commit this. We won't push it. Okay, there we go. And then what we'll do is here's our Security Hub template. It's empty. Okay. Getting colder and surrounded by pumpkin spice everything. Yeah, likewise. It's really cooled off here. I don't know if it was like this where you are, Kevin. Last week it was almost like summer here. There were a couple days, the first week of October, it was 28 degrees here, Celsius. So air conditioning was still running at points. It was insane. But now it's back to, it's 10 degrees here now. So it's feeling more like what it should be like. I think this is actually maybe a little below what we would normally get here for early October. But it was our Thanksgiving weekend this weekend, so long weekend, had a lot of turkey. It was good. All right, so let's figure this Security Hub piece out. What we can do first is we can just borrow again from here. And we'll go Security Hub, and we'll just say SH resources, okay. Owner, let's get rid of this stack information. We don't need I don't know what we'll need, if anything, there. So we'll say resources, and then let's have a look at the CloudFormation Security Hub piece and figure out what it is we want to build. Yeah, you're exactly right. You just kind of like fall doesn't really feel like fall anymore, does it? Okay, so here's what we've got. And you'll notice here over on the left-hand side, there still really isn't a ton of support for Hub, Security Hub. So what we have here is the resource that allows us to enable the service. So that's a no-brainer. And then Security Hub is made up of what they call standards. And this resource is basically how we can enable a standard in our account. And it also allows us to disable specific standards if you would like. There might just be something that you decide you don't want in your environment, so you can turn it off. Now, the automation rule, what is this? See, I don't know what this is. Let's see what it does. So we can create automation rules to update findings in Security Hub. As findings are ingested, Security Hub can apply a variety of rule actions such as suppressing findings, changing severity, and adding notes. Such rule actions will take effect when findings match your specified criteria, such as which resource or account ID is associated with its title. Interesting. Yeah, so here's our fields and filter information. I don't know if we'll worry about this, but let's get the other two pieces set up. Okay, so the first thing we need is to enable Security Hub in this region, because Security Hub is also a regional service. Okay, so let's set this piece up. It's pretty basic. And actually, I'm going to copy this over just into another window so I can read the documentation as I'm still figuring out the new streaming setup. So the old streaming setup, I could have both windows. Sort of, I got my big monitor and I could put PyCharm on one half and the documentation like in a browser on the other. And there's something different about this streaming service. If I change the size of the windows, it changes the size of what's in the stream. And I'm sure there's a way I can fix that, but I haven't tried it yet. So now what I've done is I've just made pretty much both PyCharm and Firefox almost full screen. And then I use my secondary screen just for the docs, so I don't have to keep flipping back and forth. Well, so far it seems to work okay. All right. So the first thing is we need a hub resource. And this is just type AWS Security Hub. And then we have a bunch of properties defined. And really there's not a lot for us to define here. So there's two types of control, or there's standards, right? I mentioned already. Some of the standards are automatically enabled, okay? And let's see in the documentation here, it says that does it tell us which ones are? Yeah, currently the automatically enabled standards are the Center for Internet Security, CIS, AWS Foundation's Benchmark 1.2, and the AWS Foundational Security Best Practices. So those two are enabled by default. And then what you do is if you say auto enable controls, it says here, do you want to automatically enable new controls when they're added to the standards that are already enabled? So I think this makes sense to set it to true. So if they add new controls to the standards that we already have turned on in our account, then we will enable those controls automatically. And I'll just make this, for this idea of making this as flexible as possible, we'll just say auto enable controls, and we'll put this as a parameter up here. Right? And we're going to say type is string, the default value is true, and allowed values are true or false, right? So that way it's enabled by default. What's next? Control finding generator. Actually, let me pull this up since I'm reading this doc. Right, so we just did this one, and then control finding generator. This specifies whether an account has consolidated control findings turned on or off. If the value for this field is set to security control, Security Hub generates a single finding for a control check even when the check applies to multiple enabled standards. If the value for this field is set to standard control, Security Hub generates separate findings for a control check when the check applies to multiple standards. The value of this field in a member account, the value for this field in a member account matches the value in the administrative account. For accounts that aren't part of an organization, the default value of this field is security control. If you enabled Security Hub, oof, that's a mouthful. Okay, I think we're going to try this. And this account is a member of an organization where we've got Security Hub enabled, but it isn't in our standard deploy to have Security Hub enabled in the particular region that we're operating in. So let's try it and see what it does. Okay, so if we go back to PyCharm, we'll do the same thing. We're going to go up here and we're going to set a parameter just called control finding generator. And the type is a string. And the default, I'm going to set the default to security control. Okay, and remember security control, if we use this, if this works in our environment, what it'll do is generate a single finding for a control check, even when that check applies to multiple standards, which is actually handy, because if I'm reading this right, what will happen sometimes in Security Hub is you've got two standards enabled, and both of those standards are checking for, I don't know, that you've disabled public access on your S3 buckets, just as an example. If I'm reading this right, if we leave this as standard control, then we get two findings, one for each of those standards. Whereas if I'm understanding the documentation, what would happen now is we would get a single finding, right? I don't know how it decides where to turn that finding, like where does it mark the finding as found in one of the standards versus the other, but let's try it and see. And then we're going to say allowed values are security control. And what's the other one? Standard control. And then down here, we'll just do control, what is it? Finding generator. And again, we'll refer to this. This way we can just easily change it later on. So that's that part. The next is the enable default standards. And this, is it standards? Yeah, this is either, it's true or false. So we'll just continue our path here and do this. Enable default standards. Okay. The one thing that's interesting, mood lighting. The one thing that's interesting about this enable default standards is in the documentation, and we'll check this when we get it turned on, but you'll notice here that it says the automatically enabled standards for, or currently, the Center for Internet Security at a particular version. I want to say there's a newer version than what's on this screen. In my brain, for some reason, there is 1.4.0. And then there's the AWS Foundational Best Practices. So I think for now, let's turn it on and see what it does. Okay, perfect. And then the last piece that we can add to this is our regular tags, owner, email, and environment. So we'll just borrow that from, I don't know, where would that be? Here, not there. It'll be in S3, I think. There, so we'll just borrow these tags because we want all these tags to be the same. So we'll dump that down here. And that is it. Now, I wonder, are there any outputs for this that make sense? Return values. There's only one, and this gives us the ARN of the Security Hub resource that gets created. We might as well add it. So we can go here, and we'll just call this outputs. We'll call it hub ARN. The value is ref hub. And I'll just borrow this again from here. Let's do this here. Right? So that's that. What we can then do, actually, before we go any further, let's go back over here and let's see. Okay, so there's KMS. And okay, IAM isn't here yet. So let's deploy first, and then we can get the IAM resource that we're missing right now. Okay, that's fine. So then let's go here. Grab this security and hub. And then we'll just do the same thing. We'll just copy this. Okay, we'll say deploy hub. Now we don't need to import anything, I don't think. Did we? Yeah, this is all just itself, so we don't need anything here. And then in theory, the only thing that this job requires is a pass on the validate stage. So now we can say security hub. That can go away. Okay, that's fine, that's fine, that's fine, and we'll leave the region. Okay. So let's do this. What did we change here? Yeah, we just added hub. So we'll say feature added hub and updated CI scripts. I'll push that. Where am I going? Yeah, there we go. No such file or directory. Oh, I called it Security Hub. So let's shorten this. Since I called it Hub here, and I think I called it Hub here as well, didn't I? Yeah, so we're going to just change this name. So I'll just refactor this and make it Hub. Okay, another error. Member must satisfy constraint. Member must have a length less than or equal to 204. Ooh, these are weird. What is this complaining about? AWS Security Hub. Oh, you know what? Let's go back over here. I've seen this error before, and it's usually, see what I've done here? This is just a spacing issue. So I think it should be like that. Yeah, so yeah, see type and properties are in one from the resource name. And I had it in, no I didn't. I had that right. Like that. Okay. And then properties. So we've got type depends on properties, and then in a space. And then in a space. Let's check this to make sure we didn't mess something up there. Oh, look. Security Hub hub. I just did AWS Security Hub. That's probably the issue. Let's try to fix it and see what it does. So it should be, boy, there we go. Oh, sorry, you didn't see what I just typed. I was on the wrong screen. So all I did was I added that missing piece at the end. So let's go back over here and see if this thing works now. There we go. We made it past the validation phase. Okay, that looks good. So, perfect. I don't know why it did that instead of deploying this one, but that's okay. Typical, right? The one that we want will be the last one to get deployed, which makes sense because it's just following the order in our deploy script. Okay, so if we go back over here now, there's Hub. So we need to deploy IAM first because the other services rely on, well, config will rely on this. So let's deploy that. And we should be able to deploy S3 at the same time because S3, it's going to, let's actually look at this template first. What does it pull in? Yeah, it's just, see here, it's just relying on KMS. So we'll say execute that one. And then, we need IAM before we do config, and then config needs, or hub needs config in place. No export named. Oh, yeah, this is because in our one IAM policy, we're pulling in the S3 bucket name. which feels a little backwards, but it should work. So let's just delete that stack and let the S3 bucket get completed, and then we'll just redeploy that one stage. So if we go back over here, where is it here? So here's IAM. So this should get deployed now because it pulls that bucket name in for our managed policy. Okay, there's our managed policy. Actually, while we're waiting for that, again, so we don't get confused later, we'll go back to Canada. And then here, this is where we were deploying part of the stack in the different regions. So we're just going to delete this stack. Easier for cleaning up later. So go back to Ohio. Okay, so our IAM stack's done. So let's run our config stack now. And remember, all this is doing is the recorder, because we've removed the delivery channel. The delivery channel, if you remember, is how we take those configuration snapshots, once every 24 hours. There's a bunch of options there. So you can, in our case, once every 24 hours, we'll take a snapshot of the configuration of the account and dump that file into S3. And that's not required for Security Hub. So I figured today, to get to Security Hub, let's see if we can just set up the recorder first. So we'll run this. Okay, so it's not failing, so that's good. If we go over to config, we're in Ohio. Okay, there we go. It's coming to life. All right, that's good. If we go under settings here, right, there's our recorder. There are our settings. It's using this role. And then remember the delivery methods, which we don't have set up yet. So that's good. That looks like it's working. Oops. Try that again. Okay. So we're in a holding pattern until this happens, because we need this to finish or either fail for us to troubleshoot it. And then once that's done, we can set up Hub. Because remember, the reason we need config for Hub is what happens is, or sorry, the other way around, why we need config for Hub. What happens is when you enable Security Hub, really what it's doing is it's creating what's called AWS config rules. And if you're not familiar with config rules, these are, rules that get created in config that evaluate resources against a particular standard. And config rules have existed for a long time. AWS has a huge list of what they call AWS managed config rules that you can use regardless of whether you've got Security Hub enabled or not. So we need config up and running in order to get this other piece, the Hub piece, set up. And it's taken forever. Usually when this happens, there's like a problem in the role config or something. Usually when it takes this long. Okay, well, I'll tell you what. While we're waiting for that, why don't we go back to here? And remember, I mentioned there's another piece that we can look at here, and that was in the documentation here under Hub, not the automation rule, but the standard. So in this case, what we can do is set up, so this specifies the enablement of security standard. The standard is identified by the standards ARN property to view a list of Security Hub standards and their Amazon resource names. See describe standards API operation. So this is how we can get their ARNs. You must create a separate Security Hub standard resource for each standard that you want to enable. Okay, so this is interesting actually, because in our Security Hub config, we said enable the standards by default. But instead of doing that, why don't we go back over here and we're going to make a minor change to this. Our default here is where this, enable default standards. We put the default as true. Instead, we're going to put the default as false. So enable hub, but then we're going to have separate definitions for all of the standards we want to turn on. Okay, so let me do this. I'm just going to say feature disable enable. Okay, disable default standards. We'll just commit that so that I can push it when everything else is done. And then what we need to figure out here, first thing is we need the ARN for the standard, and right here, describe standards API call would be what we could do. So we could just do this, AWS CLI Security Hub, and we will get, let's go to version 2. I think there's a command in here. See this describe standards? So describe standards is the same as that API call, and this will output for us the list of ARNs. So you can see it gives us a whole bunch of stuff, so we can maybe filter this. Okay, but let's try this command for now. If we go over here and just open up Cloud Shell, this would be an easy way to do it. And we can say AWS Security Hub. And I think it was just describe standards. I already forget. Yeah, describe standards. So let's just hit enter. Yeah, perfect. So see here, standards ARN is, there's the AWS Foundational Security version 1. There is the CIS benchmark 1.2. See this here, 1.4 is the new one. And then there's a NIST standard, and then there's a PCI standard. So how do we want to do this? This might be another good opportunity for some parameters. So what I'm thinking is we could go here and we could do something like this. Enable CIS 120 standard. Okay, string is type is a string. The default is false. Yeah, okay, yeah, this will work. And then we'll say allowed values true and false. And then we know there's 2 versions of this. So we can just copy that and say 1.4. And then we'll do this. We'll say enable AWS Foundations standard. This here we want to be true. We want to enable that. This we're going to make as true. And then there's a PCI standard, which I forget the version. Was there a version tag on that? Where was PCI? There's NIST. Yeah, it's 321. So we'll include that in the, just as the variable, because then if they come out with like 322 later, we could add that if we wanted. So what we'll do is we'll say here PCI 321, but we'll leave that as default, or sorry, we'll leave that as false. And then the final one is the NIST standard. So we'll say NIST 800, and we'll make that false as well. So if we didn't change anything, all we're going to enable is the latest version of CIS 1.4 and the AWS Foundations setup. Okay, so that's it. What I'm thinking is we use conditions for these. So what we can do is go here and say conditions. And how do we want to set this up? We'll say NIST. Does that NIST standard outside of NIST 800, does it have a version as well? Yeah, it's version 5. Okay, so let's go back over here. Where was that now? So let's make this NIST 800. I guess we could just do 5. 805. That seems weird, but that'll work. So we'll say NIST 800 v5 enabled. Okay. Actually, let's do it like this. We'll say is. A lot of times I'll do something like this. Is that standard enable? And this is where we want a condition. And what we can do is we can go over here and say CloudFormation conditions. I always forget the structure of this. Right. So it's pretty basic, right? So we're in our case, we're going to say, is this enabled? And then we're going to look at a particular type, a particular reference here. And the structure of this will look something like equals ref, what was it? Enable, I'm going to put the v5 in here too. True. Okay. Put that in quotes like that. So what we need to do now, let's just shrink all these down. Oh, can't shrink them down because they cut the names off, so we could just do this. So we'll say is this we can get rid of. Is CIS 120 enabled? And you can see where this is going to go, right? We're going to basically cut and paste all of these. $140 enabled. What's the other one? And then our is AWS, we'll just call it foundations enabled. Does it, you know what? I didn't check on that one. I didn't check to see if it has a version. Where is that command over here? Yeah, it's 1.4. Oh, did I mess that up? Okay, look at, sorry, I did that backwards. So look what we've got here. AWS Foundational Security Best Practices, version 1. CIS, version 1.2. And then, oh no, that's CIS, okay. Okay, so this does have a version. So we should put the version in there, in the name. Right, so we've got CIS. I think we're gonna change all these. We're gonna put versions in here. Version 1.0.0. Right, and then version 3.2.1. Okay, so we just have to change these by putting the V here, right? And then here we can say equals ref true. All right. Okay. So these are our conditions. Now that means what we can do is we can create the standards down here, one for each of them, and then set this up so that we can decide what to turn on and what to turn off. Hey, Friday Harbor, how are you? Thanks for joining us. All right, so let me just get the format of this the first time, and then from there, where did it go? Got too many windows open. Let's close some of these that I might not need for a while. Automation, describe standards. Leave conditions open because I'm not completely convinced I did that correctly. And then here's what we're going to set up. So here's our ARNs. We could get fancy here too and maybe put this in a map so that we don't have to type these in a bunch of times. Let's see if that works. Okay, so let's create the basic part of this, and I'll do the same thing. I'm just going to copy this so I can see it in another window. All right. So let's do CIS v120 standard, and it's a type of AWS Security Hub standard. I can't spell at all. It's not even close. Security Hub, did it again, Hub standard. Okay. We'll come back and put the conditions definition in here in a second. What we've got here is all we need to do, at least to start this up, is there's two properties: disabled standards controls. So this is how we can disable specific controls. Maybe we'll simulate that once we get it working, but all we need is the standards ARN. And we're just going to do something like that for now. And all we need to decide in here is we can say we have to define the condition. And this, again, I'll have to go back and look in the docs. Okay. So see here, these are our parameters, and then we have conditions. Those are conditions. And then down here, all we have to do is say, basically only define this if the condition is set. So that's pretty easy. We can just go back over here. And in this case, we only want to deploy this if this is essentially true. That's it. Now this is interesting. Let's get the ARN, and we're gonna put that into this document so we can see the structure, and we can get the ARN from here. Where is this CIS benchmark? This is it right here. Right? Okay. And let's just put it as a comment here for now. Yeah, I don't put it there. Right, so this is the structure of the ARN. The question is, I almost think like we could create a map that allowed us to say these are all the versions, and then find in the map the version that we want to deploy. But yeah, that's not going to work because we've defined each of the standards individually. I don't think we should make this any more complicated than it needs to be. So in this case, we can just, like, that ARN is not going to change. You can see it's got no regional information and no account information. So this is an example of a global resource. It exists everywhere across all accounts. So why make it more complicated, right? We can just do something like this, and then we can take each of these and just change them slightly, right? Version 4.1.4 to version 1.4. And this here just needs to be condition 1.4. That's it. And then we can do, I'm just going to paste it again, and we can change that to the foundations one. So we'll say AWS Foundations version, it's 1.0.0, right? Standard. And we can just grab this. Oh, look at what I did here. I didn't put the version in here. So maybe we do V. I've messed this up a little bit. V100. Okay, so we just have to change these ones. V, and then we'll say V. I'm using camel case in some places and not using camel case in the others, so we'll just go back and change these like this. Okay, and then we just need the ARN for that, which we have back over here. That's CIS benchmark. Where did the foundations go? It's up here. Oh, look at this one. It's different. This one is tied to a region. So that's easy. We can deal with that in our template as well. So we can go over here and dump that and then use a sub command in this case. So we can say sub, wrap all of this in a single bracket, and then we just change this to AWS -- region, and then that'll pick up the region that we're deploying it in. So that's easy, right? Okay, and I think I missed a standard. There's CIS version 1.2.1.4, foundations. Yeah, I did. Here's PCI. I just didn't put it down here. So let's do is PCI v321 enabled, and we'll just cut and paste this. Grab that, dump it here. Right, so that's that one, and then we've got the NIST standard here. Okay. What was that version? Oh yeah, version 3.2.1 standard. And then we just gotta cut and paste this, dump it here. Let's get the ARN from foundations, NIST. So this one also has the region information in it. Wonder why some do and some don't. So we can dump that here. And then go here and go. Right, and then the final one, again, we'll just cut and paste, right? NIST v500, so we'll say NIST 800 v5 standard. Grab our condition, dump it here, and then just have a look at our command and find the NIST standard, which is here. Let me just check. Scroll back up. Yeah, it's funny, these Security Hub, these CIS foundations, oh look, this one does. So version 1, oh, that's foundations again. There's our 2. Oh, that's interesting. Look at, so version 1.2 of the CIS benchmark doesn't have a regional definition, but 1.4 does. Okay, so we'll have to fix that one. I wonder why it kind of flips back and forth. So we can do this. And then we can go here. Right. And I need all of this wrapped in a single quote, which I forgot there. Okay, so let's grab this and take that up to our NIST right here, 1.4, and then wrap all of this in a subcommand. All right, there we go. Now, if I've done this correctly, what should happen is based off of these, if we go and look at these standards again, right, default standards. So the CIS version 1.2 is false. 1.4 is true. The foundations is true. Everything else is false. So the PCI standard and the NIST standard, which means then, if we've got this all correct, what should happen is we should deploy Security Hub, not enable the default standards because we changed that, and then enable 1.4 of the CIS benchmark and 1 of the foundations benchmark, because the way that we've got these set up. And then you could always override this in your deployment script based on what you actually wanted to do, right? Let's give it a whirl. That was a lot of changes. There has to be a spelling mistake somewhere in the mix here. I'd be shocked if there wasn't. Oh, we made it through the validate phase. That's always good. Right, so if we go back over here, we're going to let this finish. This is still creating. Okay, something's definitely up here. That doesn't make any sense. And there's no events here. What we'll do is let's go like this. We'll go over to CloudTrail. We'll go to our event history and see these here. Oh, I wonder, does it need the delivery channel? Oh, I didn't think it did. So now we're just caught in this like perpetual loop because there's no delivery channel. Did I maybe leave the reference to delivery channel and just cut that piece out? Let's have a look at the template. Was I not paying enough attention here? Let's close these down again. No, it's not here. This is our config recorder. Okay, that's interesting. Let's go back over here. Start configuration recorder. Delivery channel is not able to start configuration recorder. Okay, well maybe we need the delivery channel. That's really odd. Let's see something here. Can we go here and let's delete this config stack. I don't know what will happen. I think it should just, yeah, there we go. Create failed. Delete in progress. Okay. So we'll let this run for a bit. I'm surprised that, it's interesting. If we go over to config, we're still in Ohio. Okay, so see, this is fine. So if we just click get started, this is what we did. We said record all current and future resources. We included the global resource types. We're going to use our own IAM role, which is this one, sh development IAM config. And look at this. Yeah, that's really weird. So it's requiring our delivery method, which in our case will be an S3 bucket. And then in this case, we can put the bucket name in here because we've created, where is it? S3. These are some buckets I cleaned up earlier today. I've never seen that before where it says not found. What did we create? This one? Oh, look, it created two. We didn't clean out this old one. This is from our original deployment, so let's just delete this bucket. Okay, so this is our bucket here. And we need that in here. We're not going to pass it a prefix, so that's the path it's going to use. Okay, so let's set up the delivery method then. I just must have misunderstood the documentation. If we go back over here and go to, let's just search for config. There we go. Right, so we created the recorder. We need the delivery channel. And here it is. And this is a simple setup. So let's do this. And I'll do the same thing. We'll copy this over here again. Okay, so config's gone now. So that got cleaned up. Let's go back over to PyCharm. We'll go here, and then what we need is a config delivery channel. And a type definition for this. Config. And this is delivery channel. Properties. And in our case, I think there's only two pieces of info we need. We need config snapshot delivery properties, which can be what? Delivery frequency. Delivery frequency. And this is going to refer to delivery frequency, because there's a bunch of options here. So we're going to say delivery frequency, type is a string, default is going to be, let's do 24 hours. So this will send a delivery a config snapshot to the S3 bucket once every 24 hours. That's what this is going to do. Okay, so let's see, 24 hours, and then we'll say allowed values are 1 hour, 6 hours, 3 hours. That's a weird way to set this up. That's going to trigger my OCD. So let's do this. 3 hours, 6 hours. I guess they did it alphabetically instead of by time in the documentation. 12 hours, and then 24 hours. Oof. Okay, there we go. Okay, so we can always change that later, but that's what we need there. And then we need, do we need a name? A name for the delivery channel. If you don't specify a name, CloudFormation generates a unique one and uses that ID. That's fine. We don't need that. Because if you wanted to change it later, if you decided to change the name of your delivery channel, you can't do it anyways. You've got to replace it. So we'll leave that blank. S3 bucket name. So this is the name of the S3 bucket to which AWS config delivers the configuration snapshots, and the configuration history files. And this all belongs in the same account. So what we're going to need here is we're going to need the S3 stack, because we want to bring that S3 bucket name in dynamically. So we can do this, say S3 stack. And the question is, in here, yes, we did dash name dash ARN. So we can just do dash name. Now, in the documentation, it also has, let me show you what I'm looking at. Whoops, go here. And here. So it's got the bucket name, the key prefix, which we're not going to use, and then a KMS key ARN. So this is the KMS key that we're going to use to encrypt the data that we store in S3. So we've got to put that in there, and then we're not going to use SNS. Okay, so this we don't need, this we need. And this actually needs to go back a line like that. Let me make sure that I did that correctly. Delivery channel, yeah, okay. And then what did I say this was? S3 KMS key ARN, and then we're going to do the exact same thing because this is deployed somewhere else. So we're going to say KMS stack ARN, right? And we'll add that up here. All right, so that's that. And let's just put a space in here. Okay. So we need to change our deploy script because now config requires a bunch of jobs first. So deploy IAM, deploy KMS, and then it also relies on the job deploy. What was the other one? IAM, KMS, S3. Right? I think it was S3. IAM, S3, and KMS. Yeah, okay. So here, we can just copy this say KMS stack, KMS, S3 stack is S3. And then I'm going to put this on a new line just to keep all the stack references in one place. All right, there we go. So that adds the missing piece to config, which hopefully will allow our config deployment to finish at this point. That would be nice. Right. Okay, good. There's config. If we go back over here, there's config. We've got our change set, a misspelled delivery channel, but that'll work for today. So it's going to, oh, you know what? I'm going to change one thing. I don't know if we need this, but it looks like what needs to happen here is, based on the errors that we were seeing before, I'm going to put a depends on statement here. So I'm going to say depends on, I'm going to fix this now, delivery channel, since we have to go back. So what I want is I want the delivery channel resource to be deployed before the config recorder gets deployed. And again, I don't know, like, you don't always need to use depends on in places, but in this case, let's just add it so we can control the order in which things get deployed, because without a depends on statement, CloudFormation will try to deploy things in parallel. I think in some cases it's smart enough to know, but I like to add it. So we'll do that. So we'll just say, we'll call this a fix. Added depends on and fixed, and typo in logical resource name. And we'll deploy that. Over here. And let's see what happens. Oh, wrong place. We want to go here. This always takes longer when you're sitting looking at it. If you were working on like a couple things at once, it would just blast through each time. You'd be like, oh, that was quick. All right, so let's go back over here. We should have two change sets now. And yeah, this is the most current one. There we go. Properly spelled delivery channel and then our config recorder. So let's see what happens. Always, right? The thing I'm a little concerned about on here is this is going to, what it's going to try to do is, as it's creating the delivery channel, since we have the S3 bucket set up, it's going to test whether it has the permissions. So this is kind of why I was also not worrying about this, hopefully not having to do it, just in case we didn't have the permissions set up correctly. But let's see if we get lucky here or not. I don't remember, now that I think of it, this won't work, because when we were working on this project earlier, we set up the permissions in IAM so that we gave config the ability to talk to our S3 bucket and stuff like that. But I think in addition to the IAM policy, you need a resource policy here. So why don't we look at that while we're waiting for this to, I think, eventually time out. See this piece here? Permissions for the Amazon S3 bucket for the config delivery. This we don't have. Okay, and we're using an IAM role, and here's what we need. Yeah, see this here? Copy the following policy into your bucket policy editor. So see, we're giving the config service access to specific things. And these all match up with the IAM, the identity policy that we added. So yeah, we definitely don't have this. That is a problem. I would suspect then what's going to happen here is this will time out, because what's going to, if it works like the other services, if we go over to like any other service that you configured to write to S3, what it does is it will attempt to connect to the bucket and write something to the bucket. And in here, you'll just have a test file. It'll say something like, you know, in this case, maybe like AWS config delivery test or something like that. So I would think if we go under properties or under permissions, there's our bucket policy. All we have in here right now is a deny statement that if you're not using secure transport, to deny all actions, all S3 actions for all principals. So we've got to change this. All right, so let me grab this. There's a lot in this doc, and I'll just dump it in my sheet window here so I can keep this open as we're working away. What does it say at the top here? Okay, as a security best practice, when allowing config access to an S3 bucket, we strongly recommend that you restrict access in the bucket policy with a source account condition. If your existing bucket policy does not follow this security best practice, we strongly recommend that you edit the bucket policy to include this protection. This makes sure that config is granted access on behalf of the expected users only. So that's where we're doing this piece here. Okay. All right. So let's build this out. This doesn't look too bad outside of the fact that I think we can put a couple of these things together too. See this here? How they've got the principal is config, the action is get bucket ACL. The principal is config, the action is S3 list bucket, and they're both tied to the ARN of the bucket name. I think we can combine that into one statement, and then down here we make this a separate statement because in this case we need to provide that full path, including /* at the end. So I think we can turn this from 3 statements into 2 statements, and it should work just fine. Oh, sorry folks, I'm showing you the wrong screen. I'm jumping to too many screens. This is what I was talking about. These 2 statements, get bucket ACL and list bucket, they're both applied to the bucket itself. I think we can combine that from 2 statements into 1 statement. And then we have to create this one separately because it's got this. And I like to separate sort of operations on the bucket from operations on the objects within the bucket. We could probably jam it all into one, but I think it's easier to read. All right, so let's see if we can get this working. And I bet you at some point, if we let this run, this will eventually throw an error. Okay, so while we're waiting for that error to show up, let's go over here and we'll find our S3 bucket. Here it is. And here's our bucket policy. So we need to do, what I'm going to do is we're going to add some stuff here. We're going to say statement ID force SSL. And then we'll just get rid of the comment. Okay, so now SID, we'll call this AWS config access bucket. And then the effect is allow. The action, in this case, are the 2 actions. So one is get bucket ACL, and the other is, what was it? List bucket. Okay. And then we're going to say resource is, we need to have the ARN. So we're going to say get attribute, get attribute from bucket 0 dot ARN. And see, we've got this depends on there, so that's okay. And then we're going to say SID AWS config access objects. Oh, we need a condition in here too. This was what they were saying. The recommendation is to add a condition. So we can say string equals AWS oh, it's source account. And we'll just say sub AWS account ID. Okay. Now in here, we can say effect is allow. Action is, I think this is the, oops, let me make sure the spacing's good there. S3 put object. Let me just check to make sure that's what this is. Oh, I'm forgetting something in this. We'll go back and add them. Yeah, it's put object. We're going to say resource. And this is going to be, we're going to use a join statement here again. So we'll do it just like we did the other one. Right, so the backslash, comma, and what we'll do is we'll say get attribute bucket0.arn. So that's the first part. We don't need the prefix, so this is going to look very similar to what we did earlier on. So we'll say AWS logs. Right, that's fine. And then we'll say ref AWS. This could be, I think it's just like this, account ID. Okay, and then we'll say config, and we're gonna combine this together like that. Okay. All right, perfect. So that's our resource. Oh, and then we need the same condition here to make sure it's coming from this account, only the service. Now, what we forgot in here is the principal definition. Remember, in a resource policy, you need a principal definition. So we've got it here, meaning apply to all principals, and I forgot it on these ones. So we're going to say principal, and in this case, they're all going to be the same. So we're going to say, I think it's just service, and then we'll say config Amazon. I don't even think I need it in single quotes, so why bother? Config Amazon AWS.com. So this is all we need. Okay, so there's our first, our force SSL. So that one. Oh yeah, we turned this into two statements, right? And then I think I'm going to put the principal here instead. What did I do here? Effect action principal. Okay. I know I'm getting a little hung up on the order. Effect action principal, like that. Okay, so let's do fix added permissions to bucket policy. All right, and let's just see, have we timed out over here yet? We haven't. Now, let's do this. Let's see what's happening here. So if we get rid of a couple of these windows, if we go back to our event history here, see this, is this new? 2050, yeah, that's new. No available configuration recorders. Look at this, configuration recorder is not available to put to delivery channel. Did I maybe flip it around? Do we need the recorder and then the delivery channel? Because in the template, what I did was I said delivery channel and then recorder. So maybe I should have flipped those around. Okay, so let's do this. We know this isn't working. It's sitting here, not doing anything. So we'll just delete that. Okay, so there we go. And while we're waiting, let's have a look here. Yeah, okay, so look, I didn't RTFM again, right? To enable config, you must create a configuration recorder and a delivery channel. AWS config uses the delivery channel to deliver configuration changes to your S3 bucket or SNet. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, see this? It says AWS CloudFormation starts the recorder as soon as the delivery channel is available. But in the error message that we're seeing there, it's trying to deploy the delivery channel, and the error message was saying, so there's put delivery channel. configuration recorder is not available to put delivery channel. Maybe that's still a permissions issue because that bucket policy wasn't correct. Let's try something first. Okay, so there our config is gone. Go back, I'll just push the change that I had sitting there. And the only change in that was the additional bucket policy for that S3 bucket. So let's get that done first and see then what happens with our config deployment. There's S3. Okay, so this is just an update to our bucket policy. Let's see if we got all that done correctly. Look at that. Okay. So if we go to resources, we go to the bucket, and then we go under permissions. So there's our force SSL statement. Here's our config access to the bucket. And then here's our config access to the object. Looks pretty good. All right, so if we go back over here, here's config. And it's going to create our delivery channel and our config recorder. If this fails again, what I'll do is we'll remove that depends on, and then we'll just let CloudFormation do what it wants. Okay, so there's sort of delete operations. Take a little bit of time. I'm pretty sure that when you set up config, it does take a little bit of time, but yeah, it doesn't even look like it's starting yet, does it? While we're waiting, let's go back over here and do this guy. Oh, look, I did it backwards. So before you create delivery channel, you have to have the configuration recorder. I did it backwards. Okay, so mystery solved. Another example of the importance of reading documentation. So we'll just force that to stop. Okay. Okay, so that'll do what it needs to do over there. And then what we have to do on our side is go back to config and see what I did. Depends on. So if we get rid of this, what we should do, and I'm just going to move this so the order matches, like the order on the screen matches the way it's going to actually deploy. I know it doesn't matter, but depends on the config recorder. So config recorder must exist, and then the delivery channel is the way I'm reading that. Let's try it again. Let's see if this does the trick. Go, change set, right? Still looks exactly the same. And let's run it again. So now it should, if we've done this correctly, create the recorder. As long as that goes well, then it creates the delivery channel. Fingers crossed. And this takes a little bit of time again. Again, it's kind of like watching paint dry, right? I think, though, if we go over here and refresh the screen, it might look a little different. It does not. Oh, look, view dashboard. There we go. It's starting. Progress, right? So there's our settings, taking inventory, config role. This is not here yet. This is weird. I'll tell you what, if this fails, what we're going to do is we're going to deploy config manually just to get it working so we can test the Security Hub piece. And then what I'll do is I'll just go back and fix that other template, assuming this doesn't work again. What were those original errors? Yeah, right here. No available configuration recorder. I think that's the one that we got the second time, wasn't it? Yeah, here we go. No available delivery channel was what we got the first time. So let's see if we start getting those again. Yeah, this still doesn't feel right. Let's go read this again. Before you create a delivery channel, you must create a config recorder. You can use this action to change the S3 bucket or the topic of the existing delivery channel. To change the S3 bucket or an S3, call this action to specify the... Okay. You can only have a single delivery channel per region. While this is running, we'll give it a bit of time. I'm going to check one other thing. I grabbed this template from a different location, and I wonder if I just messed it up. So we've got these templates all pre-built for some of these services, and I wonder if I just messed it up when I copied it over. Just wasn't paying attention. So while that's running, let me just double check the template. So what we have in the original template is the config recorder. Oh, I see. So in the original template, we don't have the config delivery or the config recorder depending on each other at all. I wonder if that's what's messing this up. Yeah, okay. So we're going to try this one last time. Let's delete that again. And we're just going to remove that depends on statement and see if, does it have to deploy those things kind of in parallel, even though the documentation seems to make it appear otherwise. So all I'm going to do is remove that. When I looked in the, if you were here at the very beginning of the stream, I had copied a template that we have that I'm like 95% sure works. And the template that I copied as the basis for what we're building here is a little different because it includes some of the IAM configs, and I just misread it because the config recorder in the original YAML template, it says the config recorder depends on the config role, which we're not deploying inside this template. So let's see what it does. Removed depends on statement. We'll give it one more shot. And then if this doesn't work, we'll deploy it manually so we can test out the Security Hub piece. And then that way we can say, hey, we built all this stuff out. We should have a bunch of chain sets for this now. Yeah. All right, there it is. New change set. Okay, so now neither of these depend on each other. So let's try it again. There we go. It's deploying both at the same time now. Woohoo! Okay. Now, if we go over here and refresh this screen, taking inventory, there's our S3 bucket. So this is the delivery channel. Every 24 hours, we push the configuration history and the configuration snapshot into this bucket. Now, let's just see very quickly. If we go back to S3 and we find our bucket, it is this one here. Yeah, there we go. So see, it's created this structure. And there's, like I said, it's just that little test file that it uses to make sure that it has the permissions that it needs to get to the bucket. This is the way it's testing its IAM permissions and the bucket policy. So that's good. And that means then we're ready for this. So if we go change sets, this is the latest change set. If we look at the inputs, right, we're passing in a lot of inputs. So these are our true false statements for all of the standards we're going to deploy. Let's see what it does. We want to go here. Yeah, so it's going to create the hub and then the CIS version 1.4 standard and the Foundations version 1 standard. So let's execute that. Oh, you know what I should have shown you? When we go over here, go to rules, we have no rules, no config rules. Okay. Ah. So close. Tags does not match type map. Where is that? Security Hub tags. Oh, right here on Hub. Okay, hold on. Let's check that one. Tags JSON. Oh, you know what? Sometimes I don't know why they do this. See, this tags is different here. Do they give us an example? They don't, of course. We did this. This was also the case for the earlier project we did a couple weeks ago with the, what was it called? The fault injection simulator. It also had a slightly different structure. So let me just pull up that project. And I think that's all it is. Give me a second. Demo. Fault injector. I'll show you what I mean. So if we go here and we go to modules, and it was under dev tools, I think we put it. See this right here? I think that's the way that it wants it. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll go back over here. And that means then, actually, let me just check the docs on that. We can maybe take this and just compare it. So if we go YAML, so see here, tags key value. So no, it's a map of a string. You know what? I don't want to get hung up on figuring out the tags. We can figure that out later. I could manually tag it and then run a command to see what it expects for structure. I think we're going to take the easy route on this one and just go like that for the time being, just so we could get hub deployed at this point and see it work. If we go over here, and we'll just delete this stack. And in the meantime, I will just push this change. So we'll just say fix removed tags from hub. We figure out the tag structure later. Oops, I was already in the right screen. Go back here. And that's dev tools. Oh, just give me a second. I just got to bounce between a couple projects. Okay, so that's good. Oops, wrong thing. Go here. So we'll just wait for Hub to deploy and see what happens. So there's our stack, right? Looks exactly the same. Hub and 2 standards. Execute. There we go. So Hub's there now. And we've got a problem with this. So it doesn't like the ARN, I think. But if we go over here and we go to Hub, go to Security Hub. Yeah, it's, oh, see this? It didn't really enable it. So these are the 2 standards. These are the ones that are enabled by default. What we're asking it to do is this instead. So let's just double check our error message. Standards ARN. Invalid standard subscription request. Security Hub US East 2, rule set. Okay, let's go back and we'll have a look at this. Do they give us an example here that we could look at? Okay, there we go. Oh, see, we copied that, but it doesn't look the same. So they're passing in, this is actually a better way to do it, right? So let's just go and have a look at those standards definitions that we created, and we'll mimic what they have in the example. So all they did was, well, that's fine. Security Hub, region. The only one that we didn't do that with, is this the one that failed? 1, 2. Where did it go? Here we go. Oh, here. Oh, AWS Foundations. Oh, there's the one that caused the failure. 1, 4. Oh, I think I just typed that wrong. I think I put 1, 4 in for the... Remember I was cutting and pasting? I just don't think I changed the ARN properly. Okay, so CIS Foundations 1, 4, 1, 2. I'm going to still leave this one and see what it does, because in that ARN command we ran, it didn't have the region definition there, so we'll leave that. I think this is the one I messed up. No, it looks good. What am I doing wrong here? AWS Security Hub region standards version 1. What am I missing? It's probably right in front of my face here. I just can't see it. Okay, CIS 1.4 is failing. Oh, look. Yeah, it's still a spelling mistake. See what I did? This is the CIS standard. And I've got, no, that's right. CIS AWS Foundations benchmark. Something here doesn't look right. Let's go check these again. So let's go back to, we can run it from here. Let's just get that, remember we did AWS. So we did AWS Security Hub, describe standards, and then just spit out for us all of these. So it was complaining about this one. Didn't like the CIS. So if we look at the error here, that's our logical ID that threw the first error. And because this one canceled, or this one failed, it canceled all the other ones. So let's look at that and just check that we got this correct. There it is. And we'll do the old popular sub, dump that here, make this AWS region. Oh, look what I did. That's totally wonky. See the difference? Okay, well, let's try it like this. And I'm going to check the version 1.2 standard as well. Maybe I was looking at the wrong thing when I ran those commands. So that's AWS Foundation. Nope, this one, yeah, see, it's changed. So I cut and pasted this one, and we didn't modify this piece. Okay, so let's see here if this will fix this for us. So we'll delete this. And while we're waiting for that to happen, we can just make this a commit here, and we'll say fix updated ARN for CIS v140. And push that one. This should probably be gone by now. Oh, delete failed? Huh. Okay, so let's try the delete again. Okay, I think this is because is not subscribed to Security Hub. This is, I think, maybe because we're operating in an account that's part of our organization, maybe. So we're going to delete it, and we're going to say keep this standard. Okay, there's delete complete. Okay, that's fine. Now let's just go back here and check. So if we go to Security Hub, nothing is set up here. That's very weird, but let's see what it does. This stack probably, this deployment probably failed. Yeah, because the stack was in sort of, yeah, just rerun this. An in-between state, right? Okay, and then, oh my God, not delete. Change set, there we go. Execute. Let's see if we've got that ARN thing fixed. Account 373 is not subscribed to Security Hub. I wonder if this is a depends on thing again, because it was launching those like in quick succession of each other. Let's do something like this. Depends on hub. Okay. And we'll say each of these standards depends on hub. Still delete in progress. All right, let's see here what's going on. It really doesn't like to delete Security Hub, does it? Yeah, so that's still at the default screen. Come on now. We're in the home stretch here. If we could just get this last little piece figured out, we'd be able to get all this done in 1 week. It really is being stubborn here. If we go to config, has it done anything in config? Rules. Oh, there's still no rules here. Okay, there we go. It's working on it. Delete complete. Delete complete. Okay, there we go. Our deployment has probably failed again. So, you know what? I think what I'll do is we're going to run the pipeline from scratch again, just to make sure that it's picked up all the new files. I don't see why it wouldn't, but just in case. I guess we could check that by going where to branch. Is it branch? No, we'd go to code, repo, modules, security hub. Yep, so it's got all the depends on pieces now. Okay. Okay. Here we go. Great. If this doesn't work this time, if it throws the same error, I'm going to disable all of these so it just deploys hub and see what it does. And then maybe we can go step by step to see if we can figure it out. All right, so there's hub. And if we just go back over here, I'm still wondering if this has a bit to do with the fact that this account is part of an organization where hub is enabled in a bunch of regions by default. I wonder if that's doing something weird. Okay, there we go. That's good. Still here. Okay, it didn't fail immediately, right? Hey, it worked. Now it takes a while for this to come on, but look, we've got version 1 of the foundations and version 1.4 of the CIS benchmark. And if you remember, in the default setting, it's got the AWS best practices and the benchmark 1.2 enabled. Hey, woo, we did it. This is something that I'd like to look at. We'll do this maybe another time. You can enable what's called finding aggregation. So remember, Security Hub is a regional service. So in our little example account here, we now have Security Hub enabled in US East 1 and CA Central 1, because we consider those to be our 2 default regions. We use those in every deployment we do for every customer. So they're always turned on. And now we've enabled it in US East 2. So we've got it in 3 regions. What you can do is, so if I wanted to look at all the findings, I have to jump between the regions because it's a regional service. But what we are able to do now is use finding aggregation to aggregate all of the findings into a single region and then view them all from all one spot. Okay. We aggregate all of these findings into what we call our security account. But even in the security account, we have to jump between the regions because we never enabled this feature. Okay, so if we refresh this, it must still be setting up. It's going to take a while, but if we go over to config now, what I'm expecting to see over here, there we go. So these are all the config rules that Security Hub defines or deploys on your behalf. And then what you'll have is compliant or non-compliant. Okay. And some of these, if we click on them, you'll notice, see, it hasn't checked yet. And you can see, does it tell us how often it checks? So detective evaluation trigger, overside config changes, I'm not sure what that is, or configuration changes happen in the environment. Okay, so in this case, auto scaling isn't there, so it's not going to do anything anyways. So that's That's working. Now let's see, how long have we been at this? 2.5 hours. Let's see if any of these populate here quickly. Let's flip through a couple pages. I think the last time I turned this on, there we go. We've got a few more. It might take up to like 24 hours, and there we go, right? So in this case, we've got 2 CloudFormation stacks that don't have stack notification checks enabled. Okay, so this control checks if your CloudFormation stacks are sending event notifications via an SNS topic. This is interesting because let's go back to Security Hub, and I'll show you if you wanted to learn more about what all these checks are. Okay, it's still all blank here, but if we drill in, I think that's from AWS, and we'll do it like this. CloudWatch config. Maybe it wasn't. Security standards. Let's go to the CIS benchmark. Oh, that's where we were, weren't we? Yeah, here we go. I'm looking for CloudFormation here, I think. It's alphabetical, so where would it be? Let's do this. Just search for formation. There we go. CloudFormation 1. CloudFormation stacks should be integrated with simple notification service. So this is a standard that AWS has. If you click on this, it'll tell you information and all that, but up here, you can click on this and it'll take you to remediation actions. And then in here, it gives you a little more info. So there's our CloudFormation check, right? Blah, blah, blah. It's related to some other requirements. It gives you category information, severity low, all this great stuff. And then down here, it just gives you some information. This control checks whether an Amazon simple notification service is integrated with CloudFormation stack. This control fails for a stack if no notifications are associated to it. Configuring an SNS notification with CloudFormation helps you immediately notify stakeholders of any events or changes occurring to the stack. May or may not be something that you're interested in. Now, let's actually do something here with this. We use CloudFormation all the time, and I can tell you we've never enabled this. Maybe it's oversight on our part, but this is going to be our guinea pig for the, what was the thing called, where we can disable some of the checks. So let's have a quick look. If we go back over here, we'll take like one swing at this and see what happens. If we go and look here, our disable standard controls. So this specifies which controls are disabled, and then we need a standards control. So the reason and a standards control ARN. So what we need to do is find the ARN for that standards control. And I think we can find it. Wonder where we could find that. You know what we could do? We could go here. Cloud Shell is so good for this kind of stuff. It's easy. So we're going to do AWS Security Hub. Security Hub help. And this will show us like a man style page for this. And then what we're going to do is we're going to look here for, not limits, these here. So these are all of the commands that we can run against the Security Hub service. The first time we ran describe standards. So let's see if there's a describe standards controls. Okay. I'm totally not going to remember all of this. So we'll see if we can cut and paste this. AWS Security Hub. And then we can do that, and then we can do help. So now this will show us what we need for this. So it returns a list of security standards controls. For each control, it provides you information about whether it's enabled, the severity, and the link. Perfect, this is what we're after. So describe standards controls, and then give us our subscription ARN, which we already have. So we can do this. Oh man. That went into my brain and immediately out of my brain. Let's try it again. So standards subscription ARN. And then we can get this ARN if we can just go back to our CloudFormation stack because we put this in the template, right? If you remember. And we're looking at, this is the AWS standard. So we need this. And let me just cut and paste this somewhere else first because I've got to switch out that variable that we passed into it, the AWS region piece. We're going to change that to US East 2. And then I think what we could do is go back here, paste that there. Invalid account ID. Was there another parameter we had to pass? I'm just looking here to see. No, it doesn't. The ARN of the resource that represents your subscription to a supported standard. To get the subscription ARNs of the standard you have enabled, use the get enabled standards. Okay. Does it give us an example? Look at that. It's including everything. So again, we can cut and paste from here. And let me put that into here. And then we need that like teacup music. Okay, try it again. Nope. Customer 357 provided an invalid subscription ARN. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, so let's do this. AWS Security Hub -- describe standards. I thought that's what it was. I don't think it'll let us go back that far. No, it won't. Oh, describe standards. Isn't that what I did? There we go. Is there like a difference like once we subscribe to something? What if we do this? AWS CLI Security Hub. Not security in there. I want this. Go to version 2. There's only a couple describe commands. Returns a list of security standards controls. What was I typing? Okay, let me type this over here and then we can just cut and paste it. So it's AWS Security Hub. Describe, maybe I was using the wrong command, I don't know. Standards controls -- standards subscription -ARN. Okay, so let's cut and paste this. We'll do this in 2 commands. We'll cut and paste this back here. And then we need the ARN, which I've got here. Subscription ARN. The following arguments are required. Standards. Did I spell that wrong? Standards. Oh, I did. Subscription. Okay, there. And let's try this one more time. Grab that and dump that there. Nope. Invalid subscription ARN. How do we get... Okay, so these are our 2 things. We go here. Well, you know what? We've accomplished our goal tonight. We've got this running. I can have a look at this and see if we can figure it out. Because this will now fire on all of the stacks in this region because none of the stacks have a subscription set up to an SNS topic, right? And it is a low severity thing. So this would be a good one to put in our standard as disabled by default. But I think what we'll do is we'll call it here. Mission accomplished. So we've got config deployed, writing to a delivery channel, which we learned the delivery channel is required. The other big learning from this is we learned that in config, you've got the two pieces, right? You've got config recorder and delivery channel, and those really need to be deployed sort of at the same time. So by CloudFormation, right? Because CloudFormation is going to do it in parallel. And we were putting the depends on in the mix there, and it kept failing. So once we got that sorted, so we got config running, and then once config was there, writing to an S3 bucket, we enabled Security Hub, which then started enabling all of its controls here, even though it still looks empty from here, right? And those in turn created in config all of our rules, right? Our Security Hub rules. These are our AWS managed config rules. So yeah, mission accomplished. As always, folks, thanks for hanging out with me tonight. I appreciate it. We managed to get through everything in about 2.5 hours, so that's good stuff. We'll be back next Tuesday, building something else with CloudFormation. So until then, enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll see you next Tuesday about 7 o'clock, sort of depending. I might start a little later, but I'll throw it into Twitter or LinkedIn. If you follow me there, either of those platforms, you can get an update on when we'll be back, okay? But it'll be Tuesday evening sometime next week. So until then, bye everybody. Thanks for hanging out with me. We'll see you next week.